Welcome to Chapter 4 of Wounds of Ash, Book 1 of the Vendi Chronicles. Chapter 4. Calm down, Jos, Kano said, pointing at the flames winding around Josen's fists. He glanced around the room to see if any of the other patrons were paying attention. Magic was common in Myral, but Ringada usually had better control. It had been snowing for a solid day, and Josen had been getting more impatient by the hour. We are losing precious ground, Josen argued back, slamming his flaming fist against the rough-hewn table. Scorch marks remained in the wood. I am sure they are losing precious ground as well, and are holed up somewhere too, trying to keep warm. It will do you no good to take Ember out in a storm like this. Kano motioned out the window, where great Vendi winds howled and snow swirled. Josen knew his friend was right, but doing nothing felt awful. It gave time for memories to resurface, things Josen would rather not think about. It had happened the night before. One moment, Josen was staring at the ceiling of the room he was sharing with Kano. The next minute, he remembered lying in bed next to Ellie. Her body was soft and warm, curled up next to him. Her face was the picture of innocence as she slept. He envisioned pulling her closer to him, pressing a soft kiss into her golden hair. She would stir and gaze up at him with her pale green eyes, the gold in them becoming more pronounced as she was learning to use her magic. What is it, my love? Her voice would be light, and he would be lost staring in those eyes. I miss you, he would say, pulling her closer. That's silly, I'm right here. She would nestle in closer with a giggle. How I wish you really were. He had said the words aloud, and the image dissolved, leaving him staring at nothing but the cracked ceiling above him. He was glad Kano had not made it up to the room yet. He had cried as he had not let himself in a long time. The tears had not been enough. If anything, they had allowed the pains and memories he held at bay to come to the front of his mind. Memories had come unbidden all day, and it only frustrated him further. Memories of their wedding, held at midday on the summer solstice. She looked resplendent in a gown of pure white, a long lace train behind her. The dress had been his mother's, as Ellie's family disowned her when she informed them she wanted to marry Josen. He had never met a Myralian nobleman who did not want his child to marry a member of the Ringada. Ellie took it in stride and had always claimed Josen was the best decision she had ever made. He wondered if she still felt that way, wherever she... Jos! Kano's words pulled him back to the reality. We will find them. I know you want revenge, but we need to be patient a while longer. Kano's eyes were haggard. Josen knew he had been pushing his friend harder than he had ever intended to when they set out to find his father. I know, Kai, he whispered. I have faith in you. The snow let up the next morning. Josen had slept fitfully. His usual dream of Ellie's death plagued him, and he wiped the remnants of sleep from his eyes as he got up to dress. They would have a hard ride in front of them. The horses would more than likely make it through the snow, if they avoided larger snowdrifts. Josen tugged his boots on, noticing Kano doing the same. They got ready to go in companionable silence, and they headed towards the stables. The horses pranced eagerly as the stable workers saddled them. It did not take long before they were ready. Once astride their horses, they took off at a fast gallop out of the small town. They headed towards the last place they had seen the tracks of his father. They scouted the area for a while before finding evidence and tracks of a sizable group of creatures leaving a cave and heading south. A horse's footprints intermixed with the footprints of the creatures they traveled with. Kano used his magic to begin tracking the horse. Kano had explained his magic to Josen many years ago. Instead of having a physical manifestation of magic, his magic was more of an inward gift. As a tracker, he was more observant and prone to seeing things others might miss. The slightest impression on the snow would stand out to him. He had also explained it was easier to track someone or something with which he was familiar. All Ringada were familiar with Ringard, the High Protector's stubborn horse. They dismounted and searched for more tracks in the snow. Kano spotted the horse prints farther down a side trail, and they ran back to their horses, taking off at a gallop. They followed the path for hours. It started to veer southeast, and Kano stopped, overlooking a familiar ravine. They are heading toward Gralanth, Kano said, looking over the frozen rocky terrain below them. Are you sure? Josen asked. Their travel pattern is all starting to make sense. They started off at Ringard and made their way slowly along a southeast route. Yes, they have deviated from it slightly to raise villages along the way, and add to their numbers, but think about it. If your father can get to Gralanth, he will be a free man. No one has the magic to oppose him. He can take anything he wants from the Gralanthians. We have been following him for over a year across the countryside, and we did not see it until now. Kano held a hand to his forehead. Maybe I am losing it, Jos. I should have seen it. No one is blaming you, Kai, Josen whispered as he took in his friend's revelation. Knowing my father, this was an elaborate plan to throw us off their real intention of getting to Gralanth all along. He started his horse down a path towards the ravine opening. The familiar sound of Kano's horse followed behind him. His father. He had not thought of the man who killed his wife with that title until Kano had brought it up. Driel, the High Protector, murderer, traitor, and father. Josen pushed the thoughts from his mind as he led his horse into the ravine. They had traveled this ravine many times in their lives, visiting family that lived in Vendon. They dismounted their horses, and Josen let his friend lead. Kano would have a better chance of spotting the safest path through the icy rocks. They wound through icy patches and snowdrifts. Neither of them spoke as they focused on where they and their horses stepped. They had barely made it halfway through the ravine when the sound of unearthly howls began to echo along the ice-covered stone. Figures rose from the snowdrifts around them. Their ashen skin and dark eyes blended in with the rocks and snow in the ravine. An ambush of Grarg. The creatures crawled their way out of the deep snow that now seemed too perfectly placed around the safest path. Josen let go of the horse's reins and drew his Ringada blade from the sheath at the side, not noticing as Kano did the same. The first of the creatures had reached them, and Josen sent a fireball to its head. It went down screaming as it tried to put the flames out in the snow. With a start, Josen realized the creature was wearing tattered Ringada gear. The antlered Kirin medallion of Ringard was tarnished but identifiable on its cloak. The Grarg had been a victim of the battle at Ringard, one of the many victims hauled off and presumed to be dead. Josen barely had time to dodge before another creature threw itself at him. This one also wore Ringada gear, and it circled Josen like a cat waiting to pounce on a mouse. Josen sent flames down his Ringada blade. The creature's black eyes widened with pleasure at the show of magic. "Delicious. Your magic calls to me. It will be all mine when I am through with you." The creature's voice was guttural, and Josen shivered despite himself. He had forgotten how disturbing the experience of fighting a Grarg could be. He sent a fireball toward this one, too. The creature leapt towards Josen, and the fireball shot past it, hitting the wall of the ravine behind it. Josen barely had time to pull his blade between him and the creature. The Grarg impaled himself on the blade. The flames from the sword spread up the creature, and it unleashed another unearthly scream before completely igniting. Josen pulled his blade back as two more Grarg stalked toward him. These two wore the simple clothes of a farmer and his wife, and they eyed him warily. Josen feigned to the left as they both leaped towards him. Neither of them noticed the blast of flame he sent their way until it was too late. Within seconds, they had both been ignited. It was easy to light a living corpse on fire. Josen looked where Kano stood amongst a pile of beheaded bodies. The last two Grarg circled him, making strange guttural noises. Josen waited for them to get closer to his friend before sending two fireballs towards them. They went down with ease. Kano turned to stare at Josen. Long scratches from the creature's nails bled slightly on the side of his face. "Are you all right, Kai?" Josen asked, breathing hard. "Those things are unnerving," Kano said with shaky breaths. He wiped off his blade with his cloak before sheathing it. Giving a whistle to the horse, it trotted over from where he had left it at the start of the ambush. The best thing about Ringada horses were they were battle-hardened and used to combat. Neither horse had left their master's sight. "That was a perfectly laid trap," Kano said, motioning towards the snowdrifts. "With your father's use of air magic, it would have been easy for him to pile the snow over the entourage of Grarg and have them lie in wait for us. I should have seen this." He kicked a rock, sending snow and ice flinging with it as it soared farther down the ravine. "Now we know we're headed in the right direction," Josen said as he stepped around a headless Grarg. He sent flames over Kano's pile, and the creatures were soon smoldering in the snow. "Did you see how many of them were wearing Ringada gear?" "Yes, I even recognized one of them too, Master Gyno. He was always such a good man." Kano bowed his head in respect towards the flames before heading onward. "At least we have a better idea of what happened to the victims hauled off during the battle. Jos, if that ever happens to me, please kill me swiftly. Don't let me become a soulless creature set on consuming the magic of others." Josen shivered at the thought. Being cut off from magic was one thing, but craving it for eternity? Pure hell. His fire magic was a part of him, as much as his arms. It was a tool for helping others and keeping darkness at bay. To think of wanting nothing more than to consume the magic of others the way he might consume dinner after an exhausting day of training, he had compassion for those he had put out of their misery that day. They continued in the ravine, going even slower than they had before. Josen sent blasts of flame at each remaining snowdrift in case more Grarg lay in wait. None emerged, and Josen and Kano were relieved when they stepped out of the ravine and onto a familiar trail void of rocks. The packed dirt was covered in snow. Noticing fresh tracks of horse hooves, they rode for a few more hours. Soon the sky grew darker, and they were forced to set up their tents in the snow and prepare for another long day of tracking. It would still be a few days before they made it to Vendon, and they needed to plan before they got there. Dinner was jerky and bread purchased before heading out in the snow that morning. They ate in silence, and Josen volunteered for the first watch. Kano climbed into his tent without complaint. It was not long before he was snoring. He was more tired than he let on, Josen thought as he stared up at the sky. Only a little sliver of the moon was visible, a somber smile amidst millions of stars that shone down. The frigid air was refreshing and helped Josen stay alert as he focused on his surroundings. By the time it was his turn to rest, he was tired from trying to keep memories at bay. He shook Kano awake before stumbling to his own tent and quickly falling asleep. The memories he had pushed down all day came to the surface, to wreak havoc in his dreams.